I'm going to talk about the International Institute of New England, and I'm going to talk about resettlement and refugees and immigrants coming to our country, and I'm going to talk about forced migration. And after I speak, we're going to have two of our friends share Suitcase Stories. And the founder of Suitcase Stories, Cheryl Hamilton, is here. Cheryl can talk to you about Suitcase Stories when you get a chance. But as we heard just now from Wade, Suitcase Stories began right here in Concord, Massachusetts. It spread far and wide, and that's thanks to the leadership of Cheryl. So two of my colleagues are going to speak in a few minutes. They're going to share their Suitcase Stories. Nubar Fayan, the chairman of Flagship Pioneering, he always talks, he's from Lebanon, and he always says that immigration is an act of entrepreneurship. Anybody who immigrates, anybody who takes a step out of their country and somehow moves themselves to another country is at heart an entrepreneur. And that's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear about brave stories, people taking major risks, risking it all to come to the United States and start their lives over again. The International Institute of New England is one of 8 agencies in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that resettle refugees. So groups like Catholic Charities, the Century Care Alliance, Refugee and Immigrant Assistance Center, all of us work together to resettle refugees and serve other displaced people in this state. We were started in Lowell, Massachusetts in 1918. That's a critical historical year. The United States was ending, or getting out of World War I. World War I was ending, we were leaving that conflict. The country was becoming much more nationalistic, and the borders were starting to close. In 1924, when the Nationalities Act was passed, that act limited immigration to 2% of all nationalities in the country for the 1890 census. That was a deliberate attempt by the Congress at that time to make the country as white as could be and to make it as European as can be. In that year, the women at the YWCA in Boston, Massachusetts started an international institute. And then in the early 1980s and late 1970s, when Vietnam fell, a group of people in churches in Manchester, New Hampshire, set up an international institute there. And the 3 entities became one organization about 25 years ago, called the International Institute of New England. We have about 200 staff right now in our 3 sites, Boston, Manchester, and Lowell, Massachusetts. In Lowell, for those of you who know Lowell well, we have 2 offices, one on the 2nd floor of the Lowell Community Health Center, and the other right in front where Meta Health used to be, 135 Jackson Street. We have about, between central office and Lowell staff, we have about 55, 56 staff in Lowell. So we are very committed to the city of Lowell and now to Greater Lowell. So resettlement began in this country simply by faith groups, community organizations, and others welcoming newcomers. In that time frame, when there was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment in this country, people at the YWCA, all women actually, got together and said, you know, let's forget the politics and let's just welcome these women and children who need a place to stay, who need to learn English, who need a place to gather with friends, and let's create a center for them. It was really that simple. And all of the welcoming that has occurred in this country has been led by community groups, faith groups, men and women who have said, we need to welcome strangers, we need to welcome people who are risking everything to come to the United States. So, resettlement over the years has evolved. In 1980, the Congress passed an act called the Refugee Resettlement Act that allowed people to come into the country in a more formal way. And so organizations like ours had national offices that contract with the U.S. State Department to resettle refugees in this country. The refugees are referred to us through a formal system outside of the country, led by the United Nations, which allows displaced people to come here if they have a well-founded fear of persecution. For a long time in our history, immigrants or refugees came to our region and throughout the country in a real formal, organized, disciplined way. We had a warning that they were coming, a few weeks or a month, which now seems like a long time compared to what we've experienced. There was a systematic process for them to come to the United States. We went out and found apartments for people. We placed those people in apartments. We furnished them with food and clothing. And we welcomed people at the airports and brought them to their hotels, to their apartments. Well, a lot changed in the past several years. A lot changed in the past several years. But, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but our core mission that was started at the YWCA by a group of women who wanted to welcome the stranger, continues. Our organization resettles people who come to the United States from all over the world. We serve victims of human trafficking. We have a program for unaccompanied children who cross the southern border on their own and are reunited with families in New England and now in the Northeast. In New York City, we actually have an operation now. And we serve a whole host of other immigrants, early status immigrants, with kind of simple, straightforward case management. Helping people navigate the system, helping people to get jobs, helping people to enroll in benefits, healthcare plans, enrolling their children in schools. So basic services. And we have a whole other area which serves about 1,000 people, and that is English classes and some financial literacy programming to help people learn English. The key to success in this country is to advance as quickly as you can on your English skills so that you can get a better paying job and you and your family can advance. And we have a career services program. We help people get jobs, and we have skills training programs. We are training certified nursing assistants in both Manchester and Lowell, and those folks are working with older people, helping them in homes across the region. Then we have an immigration legal services program, a 10-person staff that helps people apply for green cards, get citizenship in this country, adjust their status in this country. So together, we are able to help people from airport pickup all the way to citizenship. And we have a staff, as I said, about 180 people, with about a $21 million budget. About a third of that is from private sources, and 2/3 of that is from public sources. And our effort is always to try to raise more money from both public and private sources to make our work possible. So, what inspires us every day, as Wade says, are the clients that we serve. They are incredibly resilient, as you're going to hear in the suitcase stories in a few minutes. They have incredible drive. They have incredible grit. They have overcome more than most of us, and most of us can imagine. They've overcome a great deal to come to the United States of America. Some of the people that we serve have traveled for a long period of time. They've left Haiti. They went to Chile in South America. They lived there for a while. They didn't find a home there. They migrated all the way up to the southern border, taking weeks, days, months on buses and by foot. They crossed the border and they've come into our services. As I said, for a long period of time, the work at the International Institute was, and at other institutes across the country that do our work, was more structured. Refugees were classified as refugees, people with a well-founded fear of persecution, and another part of the country. Think of people who left Syria, went to Turkey, stayed there for 4 or 5 years, and then came to the United States. A lot of Syrians, by the way, were resettled in Mole. Those folks, we knew they were coming. It was challenging. They came quickly, but we found apartments for them, and then we helped them to get jobs. We helped them to integrate. Well, in 2021, everything changed. Everything changed. We were serving, in fiscal year 18, we served about 1,800 unique clients. In fiscal year 23, our fiscal year is the same as the federal fiscal year, we will serve, by the end of this week, almost 10,000 unique human beings. So we've had a transformation in the organization due to circumstances that none of us imagined, at least I didn't imagine a few years ago. So, in 2021, Afghanistan fell. The United States government evacuated 76,000 people from Afghanistan, many of whom served with U.S. military and U.S. officials in Afghanistan. They came to the United States. In 4.5 months, we resettled in our 3 sites 546 Afghans. The previous 2 years, 2.5 years, we resettled about 544 people. So all of a sudden, 4.5 months, we had to find housing for people. We didn't find housing fast enough for many people. We put them in hotels for a short period of time, but we found a way to find housing for all of those people. Then, just as the situation in Afghanistan was calming down, I remember we had this meeting early February, everybody's happy, like, okay. I sent out an email, this was maybe not my best management decision, but I saw it. In our office, there was this in 1905, 6,400 people came into the port of Boston. And so I was working in the office and I took a picture that I sent out to the staff and I said, if 6,444, whatever the number was, could come into Boston, we could settle 544 people in 4.5 months. Now, meanwhile, my colleagues are in the field finding apartments, dealing with very angry people, so it didn't work. It didn't work. It was a bad decision. So, but anyway, but we had a meeting and everyone felt relieved, and we were going to finally have some weekends off. February was coming, February break was coming, and people were talking about ski trips. Then Putin invaded Ukraine, and so all of a sudden we were gearing up for Ukrainians, and about 600, 700 Ukrainians have come into services at the International Institute of New England, and that was pretty quick too. All of a sudden, they would show up at the door. They came through a program called United for Ukraine. Their status, when a refugee comes to the country, they have a secure status. They have a pathway to citizenship. They come here with a visa that's stamped a refugee. Then they get to get a green card within a year. And then within 5 years, they can become citizens of the country. Not so with many Afghans, not so with many Ukrainians. They get temporary protective status. They get paroled, that's the word. The Afghans were paroled into the United States. Our allies were paroled, they got paroled into the United States for a short period of time. Then, the situation seems to be calming down a little bit with the Ukrainians. We got systems in place. Things are feeling a little better. Then all of a sudden, people came from Haiti. And none of us in this resettlement world in Massachusetts saw this coming. As I said, 5,700 Haitians have been enrolled in services at the International Institute of New England this year. About 2,800, 2,900 through our Lowell office. And here's what happens. Those folks from the earthquake and from other events that happened in Haiti left the country. They went to South America. In some cases, some came directly from Haiti. Some came on their own and crossed the southern border. Some were part of a program that the Biden administration set up in May, in which you can be reunited here you can be sponsored to come here to the United States. All of them have humanitarian parole status, very insecure status actually legally. And we are doing our very best to keep up with demand. We're not able to find housing for them. Some of them are in the shelter system in Massachusetts. I'll talk about that in a minute. Some are going from couch to couch, try to restart their lives. They're living with families wherever they can find them. The reason they're coming to Massachusetts in particular is that 80,000 people from Haiti, 80,000 Haitians live in this state. We have the third largest concentration of Haitians outside of Haiti. Number 1 is Miami, number 2 is New York City, and we're number 3. And so people come to Haiti, come from Haiti to be with their brethren, just like the Irish came to be with their friends and family, just like the Italians came to be with their friends and family, just like every other group that's come here, including the 6,000 plus people that came that 1 week in 1907. So the same thing is happening. The same thing is happening. They just look different, and they talk differently, and they don't speak English, and they're the same as all of us. They came the same way. So right now, we have Haitians in services. Some of them have a place to live, a steady place to live. Many do not. We're working with them to help them get employer authorization documents so they can work. We're trying to help some get jobs. We have huge waiting lists for our English classes, as do all the other providers in the Commonwealth and in other states across the country. They're all full. And they all want to work. They all want to get a job. They all want to make money as fast as they possibly can, like anybody else who comes here. And there's plenty of jobs, by the way. So, this is the moment that we're in right now. 10,000 clients, almost 200 employees, many volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers. We have some of our volunteers, we're always looking for drivers in Lowell to drive food and other things to people. So if you want to volunteer, let us know. And this is the work that we do. This is the great work that we do. Shelter services. I'm going to talk about that and introduce our tellers and then take questions afterwards. So, Governor Healy declared a state of emergency in August because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a right to shelter law. And that right to shelter law means that if you have a family and you don't have a place to live, you have children, you don't have a place to live, the state will find a place to live for you. The shelters in the state were filled up, and Concord, Massachusetts welcomed people at a hotel here, and many of you I know have tried to help out in that hotel, and that's actually an example for the state. There are now 90 different communities across the state that are hosting people who have migrated here. Many of those folks are people from Haiti. IANE and other resettlement agencies, Catholic Charities, the Century, all of us, have signed agreements with the state to serve people in hotels that are not managed by providers. That are not managed by shelter providers who have a whole system in place to manage and welcome and feed people in those hotels. So we're now serving people in 8 hotels, providing immigration legal services and case management, enrolling people in services. That was not something that was contemplated years ago. It wasn't contemplated when we were getting ready, when the Afghan situation was calming down. It was not something we even put in our plan or could possibly imagine a year ago when we were doing a nice, organized plan and goals for this fiscal year. It just happened. And thanks to many, many people, many generous people, we responded as best we could to the situation that came. I was asked by someone, does this remind you, I've never lived, I visited the southern border, but I've never lived there. Does this seem like what's happening on the southern border? And I said, you know, based on what I hear, we're now experiencing what other parts of the world have experienced. There are more than 110 million displaced people in the world. Formerly displaced people by war and violence. Then there's a whole set of other people displaced because of climate change. And they're all coming to different parts of the world. And so what we're experiencing in Massachusetts with 23,000 people now in the shelter system, rising every day, 1,000 people a month are going into those shelters. We're experiencing the same thing a lot of other parts of the world are experiencing. And how we respond to this crisis is going to say a lot about us and our character years from now, when people talk about our generation, our folks at this time responding to great need. So that's the International Institute of New England at this moment in history. 105 years old, serving 10,000 people, responding as best as we possibly can to the situation at hand. I'm grateful, and we're grateful for all the folks that help out the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. It is a great organization. It's an organization that uses money wisely, supports organizations like ours, and holds us accountable for our results. That makes sure that we do our job and that we do what we say we do with your contributions. So thank you. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to turn it over to our suitcase. Who's going first? Chris is going first. So Chris and I are colleagues at the International Institute of New England. Chris is going to share his suitcase story, but Pendo is going next. And Cheryl Hamilton is here. You should all talk to her afterwards if you want to be involved in Suitcase Stories. Thank you very much. I'll take questions afterwards.
It's 5 in the evening, 5 in the morning, and I'm sitting in the middle of an intersection in Taichung, one of the largest cities in Taiwan. I'm about to have a meltdown, and I turn to my friend who's sitting next to me, and I want to scream, to shout, to cry, to say anything, but I can't. There's only silence. I should probably start from the beginning. See, I was born in Guatemala to 2 Taiwanese immigrants, and I had the word outsider labeled all over me right from the beginning. At school, I was the only Asian kid in a classroom full of Latino kids. And at home, I had no one to talk to because my parents were always working, and my brother was too young to understand any of this. One of my earliest memories is of me sitting in a classroom, and I think it's a Friday because the teacher is asking us, ¿Qué van a hacer este fin de semana? What are you doing this weekend? And all these kids, they're listing out places they're going, things they're doing, and I'm sitting here confused. First of all, why is the weekend so important that people ask this question every week? And secondly, how do all these kids have parents who have time to take them to places and do things? I'm confused because my parents work 7 days a week, and on the rare holidays or days they have off, they're usually too busy catching up with their own chores and dealing with their lives. Additionally, I didn't have any friends there because my parents didn't have time to take me to after-school activities. or have a babysitter to take care of us when we wanted to have friends over. We didn't have that. Instead, after school every day, they would take me to the store that they owned. It's a lot like the dollar stores here, except everything is in quetzales, which is the Guatemalan currency, instead of dollars. And because they were busy dealing with customers, I had nothing to do but to sit and think about the horrible things that happen at school. Oye, ¿qué hace gordito chinito? It's Augusto shouting at me from across the yard with his group of friends, something that I don't have. And this thing he shouts at me sounds really cute, but what it actually means is chubby Chinese kid. And it hurts. It stings because I know that I'm fat. And it's so difficult that sometimes I hide in the nurse's office or pretend to vomit in the bathroom just so I can skip gym class. But do I let Augusto know that what he says is bothering me? No. Instead, I get off the swing I'm on and I walk over to him. Now, I'm a chubby kid and he's like a small guy. So before he can react, I hit him as hard as I can in the stomach and watch as he falls over. His friends are too shocked to react. And if we're being honest, I feel good. This is one of the few times when I feel like I have any control of a situation. I walk away before they can react and they never bother me again. Now, I've made Guatemala sound like a pretty terrible place, but I love it for a lot of reasons. The food, the weather, the culture, long list of things. But Guatemala also struggles with violence. Around 5th grade, my uncle was killed in a robbery on the way to the parking lot from the store that we owned. And because of this, my parents freaked out. And they decided to send me to live in Texas with some relatives. Now, when I heard about this, I was really excited because Texas was in America, and I'd always heard about how great America is. It's now about a few weeks into the new semester, and the teacher is telling us to partner up for a math worksheet. This girl who's sitting next to me, she turns around and she goes, "Hey, you know, you're a strange-looking Mexican, but you want to be partners on this one?" And she says this with such cute dimples and no ill intent that I can't help but say yes. But it hurts a little inside. Because as hard as I try, people here don't seem to understand that no, not everything south of the border is Mexico. Even adults don't seem to understand that sometimes. But I don't say anything, because at least I have a friend now. And that's better than not having anyone. As I was growing up, I obviously developed this crippling fear of never belonging. Fitting in is easy. It's speaking the same way and pretending to like the same things as the people around you. But belonging is more than that. It's this sense of community, and it was something that I never thought I could have. When I was in 9th grade, my parents decided to move me and my brother back to Taiwan to live closer to relatives and to better understand the country that they were from. I'm in beginner Mandarin Chinese class now, and I've just read a passage. 你的中文听起来好奇怪哦. The teacher's telling me that my Chinese sounds strange. And she has this look on her face. It's the same look I get everywhere, from the cashier at the grocery store or the waitress at the restaurant. And I know what they're thinking. How can someone who looks Taiwanese and is living in Taiwan not be able to speak the language? And I have all these reasons, but I never tell them. Instead, what I do is I shift my accent slightly and reread the passage to her in the way she thinks it should be read. I pass, and it feels nice. But deep down, I also know that I've lost a little bit more of myself. 4 years later, I find myself back in the middle of this intersection where I'm sitting and about to have a meltdown. I turn to my friend Pierre, who's sitting next to me, and I still want to say something, but I can't because I don't think he will understand. Pierre is half French, half Taiwanese. He's an outsider like me, but he was born there. And because of that, he had so much time to build up his own community, and I thought that he could not understand my problems. So I sat there in silence. Suddenly, the 7-Eleven around the corner has the entrance music jingle as someone walks in, and I start crying. Surprised, Pierre turns to me and he goes, "Oh, what's wrong, bro?" And I explained to him that I'm not happy because we will be graduating soon, and I'll have to move away again and say goodbye to all the friends I've made here and people I care about, and that I will never have a home. He thinks about this for a second. And then, with a sort of anger that I'd never seen in him before, he tells me, "Are you kidding me? You've been everywhere. You might not have one home, but you have many homes, and that's something most people will never have. I didn't know what to say back to him then, and sat for a while in silence. Over the last few years, I've thought a lot about what he said. And while it is true that I might not have one home, I do have many places that I've called home. And I've gotten to keep a lot of the best parts of each. And that's an experience that he was right, most people don't have. That is why I work with refugees and immigrants these days. It's hard work, as Jeff mentioned earlier. There's so much struggle, we're always working on the next crisis. But I also know what it's like to be an immigrant, to come into a new country not knowing anyone and not feeling close to anything. And that's why I do the work that I do, to bring a piece of home, my home, to everyone that I work with. Thank you.
Tell me that I walk in my father's footsteps, but I didn't realize this was true until today. Here's the thing, so I'm a speaker in this art gallery, right? Yeah. And my dad, he was a famous sculptor, researcher, a book writer, and about the African art, and I'm really excited to be here. He had this wonderful job in Congo that gave us a life that everybody would desire to have, a very luxurious life. We had this pretty house, and all I remember about this house was my room filled with pink, and that makes me think I could make a very perfect Barbie. Not until one day my father disappeared, and we actually thought it was, he could take business trips, and we didn't think it was an issue. But as time went on, a month, a year of not seeing him, as a 4-year-old girl, I remember stressing out my mom and my elder siblings, asking where dad is, and all that mom could tell me is that, don't worry, he's gonna be back. But I reached a time I lost hope. I was like, okay, let me just wait till he comes back. Not until one night, we got a call from a mysterious number, and we came to know that he was my father. We were happy, but he was telling us to flee from Congo to Uganda. And in the middle of the night, I remember my sisters and my brother grabbing some stuff that we could take with us. And as a 4-year-old, to be honest, I thought you were going for a picnic, a party, as we used to do, it was our normal thing. Not to find out the following morning that I was in a ghetto, from a very luxurious house to a place where I could even barely understand what people were speaking, a different language. And all I could understand is my siblings and my mom. We met a stranger who took us to the police station because it was hard, us connecting with different languages. And fortunately, at the police station, this police officer could speak Swahili, because Swahili is one of the languages used in East Africa. We reached there, and after a while, a stranger came in claiming that he knew where we could find our father. We had mixed feelings, to be honest. We were happy, and at the same time, thinking that, what if this man wants to sell us to a certain place, a stranger? But the fact that we left Congo to Kampala, Uganda, was a lot of risk for us, so we decided to take the risk one more time. At the end, we met my dad, and we were actually excited, a 4-year-old, and seeing that after a while, I was super, extremely, I don't know how to say that, happy. Regardless, we were tired, a long journey, we were starving, so we needed to rest and get food. Dad had to take us to where we had to spend the rest of our lives. And I remember when we reached that place, my mom said this thing that, no, take me back to my home. Honestly, a 4-year-old could never understand what that could mean. In going in the house, I was shocked. I realized that I have to forget my Barbie style and just throw it away, It was a 1-room house, no beds, nothing, and honestly, getting food was hard. And the fact that we had lost everything and the little money that Dad had come with to Uganda when he was fleeing was actually scammed by people who told him that they would resettle us to the United States. So we had left nothing and we had to survive on leftover bonds from restaurants. But as time went on, we got access to better schools, we moved into a much better house, and the family had expanded because my mom had 4 other kids after that, and we lived a better life. But the fact that our father was not born in Uganda, we were not eligible for citizenship. So we were limited to some stuff, and we got a chance anyways to be resettled to the USA, and trust me, we were expecting a lot. I thought coming to the US, I'll have a Lamborghini within my first 2 months, I'll have a castle. But on arriving, I personally, I won't speak on others' behalf, I was shocked by the house we arrived in. I was like, oh, I thought it's going to be a castle. But we were like, okay, it's not as bad as the one, it's 100 times better than the one we arrived in when we went to Kampala. So like, we can manage this, but we can get a castle within a month, so that's so easy. Us having all those expectations, after a while, we came to find out that we had actually to work, and having to pay for rent, having to, having to do things on your own and be independent. To be honest, I wasn't ready for all of this. I wasn't at all. And I remember telling Dad, I'm not gonna work, I'm not gonna do nothing, I'll just stay home. Then he said this thing, and I'll never forget it. Dad is good at confusing and convincing, So he said that my daughter should know that in life, if you have money, you can buy honey. So, girl, better go and work. Life will get better. The more you work, you get money, and do everything you want. Just know this is not the same situation that you were in Congo. So you have nothing to do. So I had to get a job, and the fact that I had to pay for my college later on at school, I had to get into this thing. And with all this, living in the USA, it's now been a year. And we got jobs whereby we're so much busy, the schedules, we get a little time to meet as a family and stuff. Not until one day Dad was like, so guys, I don't care what you do, but we need to bring back our usual way, because in Uganda, regardless of what we're going through, we could always find moments of happiness and joy. We tell stories and just a family time, and we were actually losing it in the USA because jobs, everyone comes in, like I'm coming in, my sister is going out, my father is coming in, my mother is going out, so it was hard. Then I wanted to make an excuse though, because I didn't want to attend to any of this. I wanted to make money as soon as possible. I was like, oh Dad, remember you told us when you have money, you can buy honey. So that's what I'm trying to do. This man, he told me that, I know he told me that, but remember, however sweet honey is, you'll never convince that a monkey that honey is sweeter than a banana. Then I'm like, what are you really trying to mean with all this? I was like, okay. So we set up every Sundays to meet and just have that family time, and I was shocked. When we got to meet my family, I realized that my young siblings are taller than me. I was like, so I've been working hard for you guys to become taller than me. And trust me, that's so frustrating. I had to get higher heels and I trip every day. Thank you so much.
Those stories are awesome. Thank you.